Yes, hello. I'm Eddie Allison. I'm a professor and researcher at World Fish, which is an international not-for-profit research center based with the headquarters in Penang, Malaysia, but offices and laboratories throughout Africa and the Asia-Pacific region. Our mission is to ensure that fisheries and aquaculture contribute to poverty reduction and food and nutrition security. Small-scale fisheries are very diverse and dynamic, and therefore very difficult to define. They're what sociologists call socially embedded. It means they're very much a part of the societies that they're associated with. So they tend to be household economy based rather than industrial firm based. They tend to be very much linked to communities and community engagement and management of the resources. And they're linked into local food systems and traditions. They provide millions of jobs, hundreds of millions of jobs worldwide, and support over 800 million people in fishing-dependent households. They contribute to food and nutrition security. They often catch very diverse products and sell them into and distribute them within local markets, giving people access to high-quality nutrition at affordable prices. And they also often act as environmental stewards or resource stewards. So there's a resource, a contribution to sustainability when they're effectively managed as well. In the southwest Indian Ocean region, I mean, this is a region characterized by, coastlines that have traditionally been very heavily involved in fish and fisheries and trade, and islands that are very dependent on the sea around them for food and livelihoods. And so fishing is integral to this region's cultural identity and food systems. I think the coasts and the tourist experience and the economies of these islands would look very different without small-scale fishing here. Fisheries, small-scale fisheries in particular, are often overlooked when we think about economic development and coastal development and the blue economy, the maritime economy. And because of that, fishing communities in the past have been displaced by tourist development, sometimes without compensation or against their wishes. And their sort of social needs have sometimes been overlooked because they live in unofficial settlements. And for those reasons, some of the fundamental rights have been overlooked and therefore violated. Coastal fishing communities are among the most vulnerable to climate change because they're exposed directly physically by being in the path of rising sea levels, increased frequency and severity of storms. And because of their economic dependence on natural production systems, which are influenced by climate change, they have this sort of double exposure, as well as being exposed to higher temperatures and all the risk factors that the rest of the population are exposed to. They have these additional ones, and in particular, climate change impacts the production and distribution of the aquatic plants and animals that fisherfolk harvest. And so your livelihood is very dependent on the impacts of climate change. For fisherfolk in the Western Indian Ocean region, a particular concern of climate change impacts is the impacts of rising sea temperatures on the health of coral reef ecosystems, which are key to supporting many of the inshore small-scale fisheries. And so that's, I think, a particular concern in this region. But small-scale fisherfolk are, as I mentioned earlier, adaptive and dynamic, and I think it's working with them to harness that innate adaptability and to, champion the cause of what they're seeing. They're observing the changes, and to bring that knowledge and that understanding into plans for adaptation and campaigns for mitigation and climate change. I think, again, small-scale fisherfolk in this region can be allies for climate action. So I think small-scale fisheries, as the ultimate kind of nature-based food system, is very compatible with biodiversity conservation. As a wider society, we need to support their continued interaction with the clean and healthy oceans as the best way to reconcile human needs and biodiversity conservation.